Welcome to the film analysis. Today with the flop 10 with the worst films of the year 2023. And there were quite a few, but one must still make a choice. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for listening to the film analysis and for sharing it. I would also like to thank you for your financial support, and I'm already looking forward to the film year 2024. But first we must get through the worst films of 2023. Tenth place, The Expendables 4 by Scott Waugh. This is the absolute dregs of cinema. It's not a question of taste. It's also not about saying you can interpret the film in this way or that. This is a listlessly made film where no one made an effort to deliver quality. Rather, it is an experiment based on the question, how much rubbish will the audience be prepared to swallow? In addition to the fact that the Expendables have already been established, a trick has been used. Stars are being used to create a good reputation. Andy Garcia, Jason Statham and Sylvester Stallone. Their involvement is a disgrace. We must call them out. Andy, Jason, Sylvester, none of you need the money. You also carry a responsibility to your fans. It's pathetic that you are betraying the trust of your audience by shoving them into this cesspool called The Expendables 4. Ninth position, Manta Manta, second part by Til Schweiger. Til Schweiger is the worst director we have in Germany. If you don't know him, be happy. There's hardly anything good to say about Til Schweiger's filmography, but at least there was the movie Manta Manta, which had a certain charm and at the same time didn't propagate bourgeois bluntness. With the second part, however, Schweiger has now darkened this small ray of hope with brute force and lots of feces. German culture at its worst. Nothing playful, nothing light. Everything is as heavy as the cars you move. The humor is malicious and angry, never turned towards people. Til Schweiger's characters never actually laugh, they just grimace. Siegfried Kracauer tried to write a psychological history of German film, and he certainly succeeded. In it, he describes the madman Caligari, who is in an asylum. Today, German madness is no longer expressionistic, but wears knitwear and decorates the house like a wellness area in a hotel. It is the unfree bourgeois society that is going crazy, driving at full speed against the wall, but not breaking through it, because this wall is the one in a padded cell. Eighth place, Saltburn by Emerald Fennell. This film caused a furore. It is supposed to be scandalous, courageous in what it shows. Sexual debauchery like you've never seen in the cinema before. Well, if you have never been to the cinema before, it's certainly a shocking experience for the first time. This film is the result of a hashtag. You could say the hashtag Eat the Rich, which you read from time to time, and in a way the film Triangle of Sadness is also based on this hashtag. Barry Keoghan stems from a supposedly humble background in this film and not only wants to be successful at an elite university, but he also falls in love with a boy from a better background who comes from an extraordinarily rich family, and he gets involved in the game of the elite, in all the intrigues that are not entirely transparent and that you must get involved in if you want to belong. And so he spends the summer at this rich boy's parents' house, and then we are shown what goes on there. Wow, that's wicked, they say on TikTok, but what do we get to see? We are exposed to a new moralism underlining, yes, the rich are lustful and hedonistic, while the much poorer viewers are left to stare in a mixture of fascination and disgust. The problem with the rich is not that they have frivolous bad affairs or entertain a strange relationship with their relatives and drink a lot of champagne, but rather that they exploit the non-owning class, that is, all those who must sell their labor. Eat the rich, however, is often just a pseudo-political phrase designed to take some of the fun away from the rich. It is typical of large sections of the US left who have only read one line of Marx, nothing more, and whose only political concern is to piss off a few billionaires. Saltburn expresses a tame and philistine critique of capitalism that grossly disregards class struggle primarily. Seventh place, Myestro by Bradley Cooper. Classical music plays no role in the mainstream anymore. In this respect, we were delighted to see a conductor being honored with the biopic. It's about Leonard Bernstein, who was an outstanding conductor in the 20th century and an incredibly special composer. Just look at The West Side Story and Candide. But if you look at this film, there are only a few minutes that hint at this. At one point, Leonard Bernstein, sitting at the piano, notates a few notes. At another, we see Bradley Cooper pretending to be a passionate conductor, but he only lacks the orchestra, and over 90% of the time is wasted on his private life. Bernstein was bisexual. In addition to his family with his wife and children, he always had relationships with men on the side. Sometimes that didn't make it easy for everyone involved. This is the message of the film. Well, that's certainly the least interesting thing you can say about this fascinating person. Bernstein was an enthusiastic musician and highly intelligent, deeply knowledgeable. So much could have been said about the music and dialogues, but if you cut out these few scenes at the podium and at the piano, this could also be a film about a lawyer or a dentist. This piece no longer addresses Bernstein's work, it's no longer about the author, but the film is a stupid cult about the private person. Sixth place, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny by James Mangold. The success of this film has always been based on the misconception that a film has to be nothing more than a ride at an amusement park. And the carousel, like the Indiana Jones series, has no goal in mind, nothing that needs to be communicated, but compulsively everything must go round and round and round. Consequently, an old Harrison Ford must rejuvenate it so that the franchise can start all over again. And it's grotesque because we know that it's no longer the work of the actors that we are experiencing, but above all the work of the programmers. And that's why my suggestion is that we should also nominate programmers in the Best Actor Oscar category from now on. Indy may be traveling into the past, but in fact the past is eating up the future, as economist Thomas Piketty put it. If you look at the inheritance, capital inherited from old capital grows increasingly, so quickly in fact that no new capital can be formed at all. The heirs of pop culture products now dominate the culture industry, and the other heirs dominate industry and the property sector. So Indiana Jones only reflects what is already the case. Fifth place, Wonka by Paul King. Regarding ideology-critical film analyses, the question sometimes arises as to whether it is not exaggerated to place so much emphasis on the economic. The counter question may be asked, why do the films themselves do this? Why isn't Wonka the promised musical for the whole family that simply tells a touching story that has nothing to do with economics, packed full of humor and music? No, that's not the case. Why is everything focused on economics? Why is entrepreneurship glorified? The film is not propaganda in the sense that the makers are not knowingly pursuing an agenda. Rather, the propaganda has already been effective. Consequently, the makers have swallowed it to a degree rendering them unable to tell anything other than the story of the good capitalist. Since we are talking about chocolate here, it's like the sugar industry. The sugar industry gets our palates so used to how something should taste that at some point we believe that a good chocolate must taste of fat and milk powder. And the culture industry got us used to capitalism. At some point we believe that a cheerful family musical must be about a startup. Fourth place, Anatomy of a Fall by Justine Triet. Let's take a step back to Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, because this film has been compared to it. And yes, there is this interesting fact in Vertigo that the first Madeleine, if you like, dies there, and Scotty is on trial and must explain himself. Could he not have intervened to help? Was it murder? Was it suicide? And the judge collects all the facts and acquits Scotty. But in the judge's comments, Hitchcock shows us that this judge, even though he has all the facts together, hasn't understand anything. What kind of relationship Madeleine and Scotty really upheld? Hitchcock shows that in about 10 or 15 minutes and it's over. And it's wonderful. Now, Triet has decided to turn a similar process into a film lasting almost 3 hours, because here too a woman is suspected of having killed her husband, or did he fall off the balcony or out of the window? You don't really know. You must investigate the matter, and it all boils down to a very trivial statement. You can't reduce long-term relationships to a sound recording and a few witness statements. That is the message of this film. The message is right, but does it take 3 hours? Do we have to be presented with torturously long dialogues? We have arrived in the true crime genre here, and at the same time this genre should also be subverted a little. But by opting for a kind of true crime genre, you also keep the audience interested. Certainly, Sandra Hüller excels in her role, but she has played much better roles. Aesthetically, the film has nothing to offer, nor do we encounter any sophisticated narrative style here. In the end, it doesn't matter whether she murdered her husband or not, whether he jumped himself, whatever. It's just this childish fantasy endlessly rolled out. What if? We are experiencing 3 hours of bourgeois hollowness of art house cinema. You have half a thought and think you can make an entire film out of it. I think any well-told thriller would have more weight. Third place, Leave the World Behind by Sam Esmail. We should impose a dystopia moratorium. We have seen so many dystopias in recent years in which something where things are off and then individuals start to fight each other, especially not when it's a terribly bad as in Leave the World Behind. We are remarkably familiar with doom and gloom, and it's easy to make money with it. You can also use this doom and gloom to produce randomness non-stop. A family embarks on a little holiday on the coast as an oil tanker suddenly arrives on the beach and just stops there, and nobody knows what's going on with it. Telephone systems break, the television stops broadcasting. Suddenly some flamingos appear and start behaving strangely. Okay, it could be raining frogs or the gremlins would appear, whatever. And yes, it's true. Finally, Julia Roberts herself screams at deer. Well, you could say this film is mysterious. No, its construction just doesn't add up, because Esmail doesn't want to spin a conspiracy theory. You don't want to say that there's a group behind everything or a villain, and that's why you are trying to string together any number of moods. Hence, Esmail produced pure mood cinema with no impact, especially no insight. Somehow everything worsens. That's the vague feeling, and you can snuggle up cozily in your blanket and watch this madness. There is a punchline that we finally get to experience in this film. If the internet breaks down, this Netflix film tells us it might be a clever idea to have a large DVD collection. Second place, Barbie by Greta Gerwig. Now a few months have passed and you ask yourself, was there something? Yes, there was this Barbenheimer hype, and it certainly ensured that some Barbie viewers also went to see Oppenheimer. We have Barbie to thank for that, but Barbie herself has aged like milk. This image film for Mattel has set itself the task of squeezing all the liberal feminist discourse into 2 hours without adding a new layer or even a new thought. It's a film for people who just want to watch TikTok clips and find their own limited standpoint confirmed. Annoyingly, a film with people playing puppets would have had enormous potential, especially as we ourselves behave very much like dolls, or pop culture consists of superstars resembling dolls. You could have spanned a huge arc all the way back to E.T.A. Hoffman and romantic literature. Barbie features none of that. The film could have been a utopian vision for a new coexistence of the sexes. Instead, Greta Gerwig is merely chasing after the zeitgeist and has therefore created a short-winded film that will soon be forgotten. First place, The Flash by Andre Muschietti and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania by Peyton Reed. First place is shared between Marvel and DC. They both made the same film here. We are in an endless paradox. We are dealing with different universes. We travel back and forth in time, sometimes jumping there, sometimes jumping in worlds that exist parallel to our worlds. Changing something there to change something in our present, then realizing that it might not make sense, revising it again, going back and forth, back and forth. The films can hardly be surpassed in their hideousness, and The Flash at least finds a particularly good metaphor for this hideousness. We see how the retired Batman, played by Michael Keaton, prepares spaghetti on a plate. Everything is dumped on it, and then he spills an unappetizing sauce on top to illustrate how chaotic the situation in the universe is when you start messing around with time travel. In this film, as in the other, you end up back where you started. Pop culture is like a snake biting its own tail. Only the license holders have become richer again in the end. We have all gone round in circles with Barry, aka The Flash, and Ant-Man. Blockbuster cinema has tied itself up in mega multi-universes, in time loops, and the knot can only be broken by force to free cinema and enable something new. The past is permanently present. just as any old song can become a trend, just as everything is recycled and remixed, here too we find only retromania, including all the Batman actors of the past. Once more, like Sisyphus, the stone is rolled up the mountain only to let it roll down again. The capital of the rights holders may increase in this way, but the joy remains extremely small, and what both films address and what Marvel and DC are so often about is simply confirming the status quo once again, leaving the status quo as it is and saying that this is the best of all imaginable worlds, refusing any demands on politicians or power holders. Spectacularly fast and loud, we are treading water with these films. We are racing to a standstill with The Flash and Ant-Man. The only salvation will be to avert our gaze so that we don't watch but see next year. It would be nice if you would like to support the film analysis financially. You can do so via my bank account or PayPal. Also, you can find me on Patreon. Thank you very much.